What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Year Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. On this Thursday, April 24th, 2025, it is Christmas cometh early for the NFL fan. The NFL draft kicks off tonight, 8 p.m. Green Bay is the host city, and there is a lot of last minute shuffling, mock drafts, trades to be made, trades not to be made. Players are going to slide, players are going to rise, players are going to fall. Our guy, Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football at Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us as he typically does. And we'll try to make sense of it. I mean, look, we know one thing, my friend. 1 and 2, Titans will draft Cam Ward, and the Cleveland Browns will draft Travis Hunter. We can agree on that.
Possibly, Drew Quarter is a tremendous talent, and you just never know what the Browns are going to do. Andrew Barry's established general manager there, and obviously Stefanski, he's on the hot seat, but uh, Carter's going to be tough for them to pass, and that's going to be interesting.
Don't
But
tell.
right
You're
out the box, you're going to say, okay, Hunter, he's that dual threat. Everybody wants to talk about him, but we'll
well,
see. I know what you want. You want Carter
well
to
here.
drop to the Giants.
Well, here I need a lot of things to drop to the Giants, to be honest with you. Here's the thing with Hunter though. There's talk that if he goes, if Cleveland grabs him at number 2, then he's primarily going to be used as a wide receiver, not a
Correct.
CB.
They've come out and said that they view him as a receiver. And to be honest with you, Q, I know he's got great numbers in terms of receptions and all that. He is a great cover corner. Coming out of high school, one of the top draft picks. I followed him, talked to some people around him from Jackson State for my work with the Black College Football Hall of Fame, and they were just raving about this kid and his coverage skills. So, I think that corner may be his best spot, but the Browns are viewing him at receiver, and they need help there because they have Judy and they don't have much else.
Listen, right now he is the big favorite to go number 2, right? DK had him at minus 380. BetMGM had it at minus 450. I mean, now all of a sudden it's like even with Cam Ward, I mean, it's like minus 910. I mean, Ward's going to the Titans. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Hunter then goes to Cleveland. Now you have my squad, the Giants. And by the way, Abdul Carter, when you think about the odds to be the number second pick, plus 130 and plus 290. So there's a lot of disparity from FanDuel to DraftKings, BetMGM plus 360. It's so fluid. It changes so fast. But that's what we talk about on the show. So again, even if I mean, I'll try to pull up too. This is as of, let's give you updated. All right. So Cam Ward right now is minus 2,000 to be the number 1 pick. So again, unless you can just burn it and wipe your tush with it like it's tissue paper money, you're not risking 2,000 to win $10. Okay, fine. Then you've got Travis Hunter. So now it's dipped to minus 700. And then also minus 1,000 to be the first non-quarterback taken. So again, you're going to play the first, not the latter. Now we get to the Giants at number 3, and this is where there seems to be a lot of conversation. You mentioned the edge rusher. We know they've got Thibodeau. We know they've got Burns. It's never a good thing when your position is being drafted that you currently reside in or play in. In this case, Thibodeau and Burns. They need an edge rusher. They need a dominant player. He's arguably the best player in the draft. If you want to say generational talent, fine. Now his odds are sitting at minus 700 to be the number 3 pick. Here's what I will say. The Giants did a lot of work scouting and spent a lot of money and resources and time scouting Shedeur Sanders and these other quarterbacks. I don't believe, if you're Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, like my best case scenario, this is me putting my fan hat on for a moment. My best case scenario as a Giant fan, you draft Carter at 3, and then let's say, I'd have to double check, but I think Seattle 17, 18, you trade back, you grab that pick, and you go with the kid Jackson Dart, if he's still on the board. Then you've got your quarterback, and you've got your franchise defensive player, and you believe you have a franchise quarterback that eventually will supplant i.e., Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, who are just stopgaps. Now, let's get into the Sanders talk for a moment. There was a very interesting tweet that was put out by Jay Glazer, and I want to get your thoughts on this. They were talking about the criterias that we're looking at, right? Um, we're looking at arguably any of the character issues, the red flags, right, in the NFL. Everyone talks about that, the red flags. How do you interview? Do you have a checkered past? Do you have a checkered history? Are there concerns? Then we look at your injury history, right? Can we put all our eggs in one basket and draft you knowing that you will be healthy? And then the third category that was added, which I find fascinating, like the Peyton Manning category, do you love football? Right? Do you love the game of football? You and I have been to many drafts. You and I have done a substantial amount of work leading up to drafts. And I throw that out to you because I want to get your insight on this, covering the league as long as you had. So you had that third, bullet point. Do you love football? I I feel as though this is just my opinion, Lloyd. I think Shedeur Sanders was an outstanding college quarterback. But I also believe a lot of it was the hype with Dion, Colorado, big time stats. I'm not saying the kid can't play, but I feel as though the distractions and people are like, oh, what are you talking about? This? I feel like they can't reach at three. They have to go with the pick. They have to go defense. You can get your quarterback later. They have to go with and I'm not going to say can't miss because it's a crapshoot, but in this case, I'm more confident going with Carter than drafting a quarterback at three because I saw when they drafted Daniel Jones at 6 a couple years ago, it blew it in their face. So maybe I'm gun shy. But do you believe that Sanders, if you take a step back and look at Shedeur Sanders, are you like, hey, Q, that's nonsense. Wherever this kid lands, he's going to be able to make some plays. Or, yes, I understand your reservations if he goes to New York in that market with the Giants, the expectations, and, of course, his father breathing down his neck.
Well, there's a lot of intangibles and situations in terms of these. I'll say all the quarterbacks. This quarterback class is solid, not spectacular. And I always lean on you go to an Andrew Luck, you go to a John Elway. These are can't miss guys. You put them on the roster, the team improves. All the boats raised in the water. And
Right.
I just am not seeing that with these quarterbacks. Ward is a solid guy. He's been to three schools. You talk to Shedeur Sanders, looks the part. I talked to him a lot when he was at Jackson State. He won our Player of the Year award when he was with the Black College Football Hall of Fame. And, a confident young man. And obviously, yes, his father is always kind of going to be over his shoulder. Even now, Dion's kind of pushed back and said, okay, I'm not going to get in the way and I'm going to let my son grow up. In terms of his play, the Big 12, it's not the Big 10, it's not the SEC. So you do have to kind of say, okay, what kind of competition has he faced in the bigger games where he did play, some of these bigger conferences? He kind of maybe came up short, throws a nice football, but the windows were very open in college. And you wonder about, okay, is he going to be able to fit that ball in those tight spaces that the NFL requires? So I can't blame any Giants people in terms of saying, he's not slam dunking. And you're going to spend a lot of capital at that number three spot bringing him in. So why not just bring in the best prospect, a guy like Carter? So I think in terms of Sanders, you got to watch the Giants, you got to watch the Raiders, the Saints, and then the Steelers. These all could be potential landing spots for him.
BYP powered from our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Don't forget 20% off your first purchase, BYP20. Is it, am I overstate? Like, do you love football? Like, I don't believe knowing that Deion Sanders is your father, you're going to go out and act a fool and make a fool out of yourself and not put in the time. But I, I just, I don't know. Maybe it's just my gut. I had one gut feeling years ago when it came to the draft, when I was on the radio, and I stood on it and I got hammered. I flat out said, Josh Rosen, I don't even need to watch the kid. I think he's going to be flat out a bust. There was something about that kid. And it turned out he's a bust. I'm not saying Sanders is going to be a bust. I just don't think the Giants with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, the GM and the head coach respectively, after having the type of seasons that they have, having been questioned, and then, again, the shuffling of the rosters and the Daniel Jones situation to Saquon Barkley and John Mara, we're going to, lose sleep at night. He goes to the Eagles, 2,000 yards. They win a championship. They win the Super Bowl. All that sitting and marinating, that nasty taste. If they reach again for a quarterback and it doesn't work out, if it doesn't work out, I mean, then it's another 10, 15 years of horrible football. And I don't believe any of these quarterbacks are a franchise changing quarterback. I don't. I think Cam Ward's going to struggle. I really don't. I think, if you can grab that quarterback later, look, I don't know if Sanders is going to slide, but I'll tell you this: if the Giants don't draft him at 3, he's sliding. He's sliding. He's sliding. He's probably going to go past 15. So that's really just my thought. I think they can ill afford to screw this up because the Patriots don't need a quarterback. Jackson doesn't need a quarterback. The Raiders don't need a quarterback. The Jets are not going to draft a quarterback. They're going to go tackle. We know that. Panthers don't need a quarterback. There you got the Saints. For Sanders, you need to stick him in a situation or you need to put him somewhere with a head coach. And I know who you're thinking, but you need to stick him with a head coach that can kind of reel him in. And, is that Pittsburgh? Is it McVay with the Rams? Tomlin's had his issues with players before in the past. Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown. Guys have gone, went cuckoo and rogue and stuff like that and just, did things to embarrass themselves in the franchise. I think that's the fit for Sanders. You got to find that stability in that franchise. If the Giants don't take him at 3, do you see him sliding out of the first round?
No, I don't see him sliding out of the first round,
All
Q. And
right.
I think one of these teams are going to step up and take him. He's obviously the number 2 quarterback in this draft class, and we know a lot of times quarterbacks they reach for him. Look at Kenny Pickett; he was overdrafted, and somebody's going to give him the opportunity. I still think the Raiders. Yes, they did bring in Geno Smith, but I heard that Tom Brady actually thinks Shedeur Sanders may give him that opportunity. And then the Saints, you talk about that Derek Carr injury, Spencer Rattler, is he ready to roll? The Steelers, obviously, only with Mason Rudolph on their roster, they definitely got to bring in a quarterback. So somebody will give him an opportunity. I also think that Jackson's Dart may get an opportunity in the first round. And then don't forget about Jalen Milroe right at the end. He could be this year's Lamar Jackson. So,
Sure.
but all these quarterbacks, as I said, it's still, they're that none of them are that can't miss
Yeah.
uh, finished product coming out of college. And I want to get back to your point where you were talking about do they love football? That's a great point because a lot of these guys that I talk to, former general managers, they want to see this. They want to see the love for the game. And I'll give you a story. When I was covering the Eagles as a beat guy, there was an offensive lineman on the Eagles. And I talked to him. I was like, "Oh, when did you start playing football, et cetera?" And he kind of was like, it was kind of something I fell into. I was big, et cetera. And this guy did not pan out. He did not love the game. He just something he kind of did, and he kind of flamed out. So it's
Was he from
definitely
Delaware State by any chance?
no, he was not from Delaware State. But it's just a situation where it's like you can see it coming, and sometimes with these guys and the investment that these franchises are going to make, you know, they're not going to make it, and they're going to flame out, particularly when they get to training camp and you get these veterans in there. You say, you know what, I'm going to see what this kid has,
Yeah.
and he may not be the real deal.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you said he was a tackle, and I was thinking obviously Jamal Jackson, who was a center at the time. That just didn't pan out. And I spoke to him a lot prior to leading up to that draft. Interesting point you bring up. And by the way, the Raiders are sitting at 6. There's a lot of talk they go with the running back at minus 10,000. We agreed on what was it, Wednesday's BYP. New England's definitely going to go offensive line, give a little pass protection, right, for May. And then at 5, you know, I feel as though Jacksonville, I don't know what they're thinking. Do they go running back? Do they go defensive tackle? They take the kid Mason Grant, I think is plus 125 at number 5, or they go with the Boise State running back. What do you do at Jacksonville at 5?
They're going to be real interesting, Q, because a lot of people are projecting Ashton Genty there now. Um, ATN's been kind of underachiever. This could be the spot for Genti. Obviously, everybody knows him because he came 28 yards short of breaking Barry Sanders' record, and they're going to Liam Cohen's going to probably need that all-purpose back in his offense. He had Kyron Williams with the Rams, and he probably wants a guy who can catch a football, do dynamic things, and that's what Genti can do. So you got to watch him there. They also could go, for Mason Graham. That's the other name that I'm hearing from Michigan if they want to pair him with Trayvon Walker from a couple years ago. Mason Graham's out of Detroit, Michigan area, and he's just that penetrator. Reminds me of a Christian Wilkins type. So they're the two names that I'm hearing for the Jags.
You'll probably get a run of offensive linemen, 7 and 8, Jets and Panthers, respectively. But if Sanders is still on the board at number 7 when it's time for the Jets to make the pick, do the New York Jets entertain? I mean, every scenario is plausible, right? You're walking through it. We know that. That kid from Missouri is a plus 135 to go to the Jets to tackle, but these are the Jets. You know, Justin Fields is a stopgap. If they can get 3 to 4 or 5 great years, or very good years, I should say, of Justin Fields on that contract, that's great. But it's definitely a topic of this conversation with the Jets already signing Fields to a 2-year deal. So a lot of analysts just speculate that the Jets might consider drafting Sanders if he falls to them. So, again, if he's there, now you create a little bit of a quarterback competition. I mean, can you see the Jets doing that?
You never know what the Jets are going to do. And, when you say that, it makes me remember all the times I was in Radio City, and I would have loved to see the guys in the balcony if they announced this pick, and they would have been booing, yelling, and screaming. But the draft's in Green Bay. I think, everybody's projecting this, and I think they're going to probably look at Penn State tight end, Tyler Warren.
Okay.
He's just a tremendous player, and they could put him in that offense, help out Justin Fields. Aaron Glenn wants to get that power running game going and have that short passing game to the tight end. So I think that could work out. Sanders, yeah, I think the Jets are going to probably take a pass. And if it's not Armand Membo, the big tackle, the athletic kid out of Missouri that you were talking about, or Warren, it's going to be interesting. But I think they're probably the two leaders for the Jets right now.
Both minus 350 to be the second offensive lineman taken after Campbell. Carolina, we mentioned, will go defense. Now you go to the Saints. Here we go. Sanders again, plus 300 to be the number 9 pick, minus 600 go ninth or later. You look at the track record with the Saints. I mean, it kind of goes against, quarterback against recent odds. When we talk about the movement, the odds movement. Listen, the Saints and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then you had Cleveland had the shortest odds along with the Giants to draft Sanders. So if you're the Saints and if Sanders there, do they take a flyer on Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I believe they will. And Kellen Moore is going to bring him into his offense. Now, the thing
Yep.
is, he's not like Jalen Hurts. He's not a guy that's a read option guy. He's not that much of a big runner. Yeah, he can get out and make plays here and there, kind of like a Jordan Love. But he's more of a pocket passer. So I think the Saints, they need quarterback, they need edge, they need offensive line help because Ramczyk just retired. And then cornerback, you got to look at that as well. So maybe Texas corner Jahdae Barron may be in play here. Will Johnson from Michigan, he's another corner that they may look at. They're probably just going to let the best player kind of fall to them. I mean, we always talk about that no man's range,
Yeah.
you like from 12 to 20.
Yeah.
So, but if Sanders there, and I'm hearing that Derek Carr's injury is very significant. They need somebody to come in there because let's face it, Spencer Rattler, he struggled last season and he's just not a starter in the NFL.
All right, we'll round out the top 10, then I'll just throw a couple teams and get your thoughts on that. You got the Bears at 10. There's a lot of talk, either running back. Obviously, they still have Swift back there, or the tight end that you mentioned, Tyler Warren, right now is at plus 300 to go 10th. I'm sorry, minus 400 to be the first tight end taken, and minus 170 to be the top 10 pick. Pardon me. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. I think they have to add another offensive weapon for Caleb Williams. So do you think they go running back, tight end, if one of those players is there?
Well, that's interesting because they went about rebuilding an offensive line, bringing in Joe Thuney and other pieces. But edge could be something that they're looking at as well. There's a lot of good edge rushers. Jalen Walker, maybe he'll fall to them. Jahide Campbell out of Alabama is another linebacker. So I think they're going to try to help that defense out. Yeah, Caleb Williams, running back could be there as well. You got to watch Omari and Hampton out of North Carolina. If Gentry's already gone, he would be the second back off the board. Because let's face it, Swift. We talked about this in our preview.
Yeah.
Swift, he needs to be a 1-2 combo type back because I just don't think he's a lead back down in, down out. So the Bears, a lot of options for them. They're picking at that 10 spot, good spot to be in. They have 7 picks overall. They may try to slide down, but running back will be in play as well as edge, I would think, with them.
All right, there's your top 10 2025 NFL draft. We are just breezing through another edition of BYP. Back your play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Let's move around a little bit. First round. All right, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, there was talk that the Dallas Cowboys are going to trade down. They're going to try to make a move. I mean, here we go. We know they need some weapons. I mean, is it going to be a wide receiver? What's your play if you're Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, and the Dallas Cowboys with the 12th overall pick?
The funny thing about them is that he's running around saying there's going to be substantial trades that we're going to do, and it's just like last year when he said, "Oh, it's going to be the best all season ever," and this team is just like they're kind of rudderless.
Yeah.
He's the general manager, and they need to bring a football guy in there first and foremost. Brian Schottenheimer, a very odd pick to come in as the new head coach. I'm hearing a couple names. Maybe they go with offensive line to kind of rebuild that thing. Zach Martin's getting a little old, but receiver, they have CD Lamb there, but he needs somebody to help him out. Cooks was not the answer. He's moving on. So maybe it may be McMillan
Yep.
coming out of Arizona.
Yep.
He's a big player. Um, Puka Nacua type size and catch radius. But the only thing with him, Q, is I'm hearing that love football thing with him. Former volleyball player, and he said that was his favorite sport in interviews. And
Interesting.
some of the guys are questioning that. So got to watch that. Also, Texas's Matthew Golden may be in play, a very speedy receiver. They could put him into offense and then go from there. So I'd say watch wide receiver, O line, and then of course they need help at cornerback. They need to rebuild that unit back there and an edge rusher because they lost to Marcus Lawrence.
If the Giants do make a trade, say at 18-19, they're going to go and grab Jackson Dart. Um, Seattle would be in that spot. Again, if Sanders keeps dropping, there you have Pittsburgh, right? I mean, the interesting thing is everyone's kind of waiting for that Aaron Rodgers shoe to drop. I think Aaron Rodgers is done. I think he's retired. I know people were like, why are you throwing the football around with DK Metcalf? He's like, well, I'm trying to figure it out, what I want to do. He's, little pregnant, can't be a little pregnant. He's either all in or all out. I think he's all out. And the other thing is, if you're Pittsburgh, think about this. Let's just say they draft Sanders drops and they draft Sanders. And then Aaron Rodgers decides, you know what? I want to play in the AFC North. I want to go play in Pittsburgh, right? It's a storied franchise. Do you really envision or foresee any type of scenario where Aaron Rodgers is sitting in that quarterback room with Shedeur Sanders and it's not a combustible situation?
That would be a mess. And he's always said, I'm not going to be anybody's mentor. We saw that in the past when Jordan Love was taken by the Packers. He was very angry. And the thing is, Q, he's got to realize who he is at this stage in his career. Aaron Rodgers, 41, coming off of Achilles and a very bad season for the Jets. The Jets said, take a walk, even though he's under contract. And thing is with the Steelers, they're not going to let any players hold him hostage. Think about the Le'Veon Bell situation.
Sure.
They are they dictate the terms, and I tend to agree with you that Aaron Rodgers will retire because the Steelers are tired of waiting for him. They're going to go into the draft. They're going to see what kind of falls to them, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or get a quarterback later in the draft, like a Jalen Milroe or somebody like that. But interesting thing here with Aaron Rodgers. I just think, he doesn't want to play anymore. But the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, he's just looking for somebody that's going to take care of the football and let that defense do its thing in the running game. But that's only going to do so much. A lot of people want to see the Steelers, not just make the playoffs, but win a playoff game. They didn't really compete against the Ravens this year in the playoffs.
If New Orleans is also trying to move up, there's reports that they're trying to move up for Jackson Dart. Do you believe Jackson Dart is off the board by the time round one is complete?
Yeah, I think somebody's going to give him an opportunity. He was very well thought out, come out of high school, went to USC, and it just didn't work out there. Played a lot better these past couple years at Ole Miss, and he's that riser in the draft. People are talking him up as well as Milroe out of Alabama. So those two quarterbacks are definitely on scouts' radars,
Well,
and
if he
and they,
slides, Lloyd, if not to cut you off, if
yeah,
that's the case and New Orleans um, makes a trade for Jackson Dart, right? Then all of a sudden that Sanders is not with the Saints. He's not going to Bears. He's not going to 49ers. I mean, I'm just saying I know it sounds crazy, but I believe like he's that it's like the X factor tonight because you don't think for 1 minute. Look, San Francisco at 11, they definitely want to go defense. They want to go either edge rusher. They want to fix the offensive line as well. But again, here's the talk of are you going to pay Purdy or you're not going to pay Purdy? I mean, can the total apple cart be upset and all of a sudden San Fran pulls a rabbit out of a hat and they select Sanders at 11? Like, I feel as though he's the player that teams are going to monitor if he keeps dropping, dropping, dropping. Here's another example. The Dallas
yeah, he's
Cowboys.
right, right, and they're going to, Dak. They can get out of that contract in the next couple of years, and they could use a young quarterback there. I know they brought in Joe Milton in a trade, but why not take Sanders? And the Saints are interesting. They have 9 picks, and yeah, somebody's going to take a flyer on Sanders, or if he's sitting there waiting. Think about Pitts with the Falcons a couple of years ago. They just first tight end. Nobody saw that coming. As early as they took him, and it's going to be interesting to see Sanders. If he has to sit, he decided not to come to the green room. So maybe he's seeing something. Maybe he's thinking he may have to sit there a while.
I, I think it's fascinating one player, right? How the slide, and we've seen it before. And listen, crazier things have happened with the NFL draft. I mean, it really has. And I don't know. I'm not going to put anything past anyone. You got Miami 13, the Colts 14. Look, Atlanta took Michael Penix after they signed Kirk Cousins. Seattle, as I mentioned, sits at 18. Uh, so if he keeps sliding, then you got Pittsburgh. That again might be the scenario. Or, the Steelers and the Saints are also co-favorites at plus 2,000 to take Jackson Dart. So now if Sanders slides and the Saints don't grab him for some reason, Dallas 49ers, they don't grab him. Pittsburgh goes with Jackson Dart. That means what? Sanders is out of the first. He's not a first round draft pick.
He's going to be taking a first round too.
Or or
It's going
or
to drop.
or does he drop to 26 and the Rams grab him?
Well, McVay's always looking for a young quarterback to kind of bring along. And Stafford is, he's 36, 37 years old. How much gas got left in the tank, and who's going to be a successor? So Shedeur definitely, he's one of those guys, all right, where's Sanders going? Is Jalen Milroe going to be a first round quarterback? Jackson Dart as well.
You think Milroe
Genty's
will?
I think he may be this year's Lamar Jackson, where Jackson was sitting there kind of waiting, and the
Wow.
Ravens jumped to that 32nd position. He's a first rounder, but right before the second. But yeah, I think Milroe has a chance, and his workout went so well. I was talking to some guys that were there. They said he just looked spectacular, and it was been his private workout.
Yeah, I don't get too. Then if that's the case, then say he drops and he goes to Pittsburgh at 20, 21. All I'm saying is that if a player drops significantly, then that to some teams that is a red flag. Why is the player dropping? Obviously, you have to connect the dots, right? risk to reward, need against want, because there are some teams that already have a quarterback. But I'm telling you, you know, is the camera going to be on him years ago like it was on Aaron Rodgers? Because if you go by some of these mock drafts that I'm seeing, some really credible guys, Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, Genty, the tackle from Missouri, then Warren, then Walker, then Dart at number 9. Now it gets interesting. Chicago doesn't need a quarterback. Then you got the 49ers going defense. You got the Dallas Cowboys going wide receiver. You got Miami going cornerback. You got the Colts going cornerback. You got the Falcons going to edge. 16, 17, 18. I mean, listen, these teams have quarterbacks. Tampa, quarterback. Denver, quarterback. Pittsburgh, if they go Milrow, then you got the Chargers, quarterback. Green Bay's got a quarterback. Minnesota has a quarterback. Houston has a quarterback. Maybe the Rams. If not, Baltimore, Detroit, Washington, Buffalo, Kansas City, and the Eagles all have quarterbacks. The other
But
shoe
there's
will
one,
drop tonight.
yeah. Well, every team has their first pick for the first time in over 10 years.
It's
So
going to be crazy.
everybody's got picks. There's going to be some wheeling and dealing, and somebody is going to jump it. If one of those quarterbacks like Dart or Milrow or even Sanders, if they're sliding, somebody's going to jump back into that first round, and they're going to take a chance on him. I just believe all these guys are going to get their chance as a first round draft pick.
All right, lastly, Eagles at 32. Always a good thing when you pick 32, which means you did something right during the season prior to winning the championship. It seems as though they're going to go pass rusher, edge rusher.
The Eagles will go, either offensive line or defensive line, but I think it'll be defensive tackle because, they lost Milton Williams and they need somebody to replace him in the middle of that defense. They also lost Sweat on the edge. So Howie Roseman, notorious for building his teams up front. The name I'm hearing is Nolan out of Ole Miss. He's a big physical tackle. The only thing is, Q, there are some red flags with him. So
Well,
it's
they
going to be
drafted
interesting
Jalen
to see.
Carter.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So we'll see if Nolan's their guy, but I definitely expect Howie Roseman to go for one of those two positions.
Okay. I'm just trying to. I'm thinking of stuff as we're talking. My mind is just a little hamster wheel is going goofy with these picks and the potential. Where can we see the draft really get crazy? I mean, I feel as though New England at number 4 is an interesting watch.
It is because you got Mike Vrabel there, and it's a tear down situation. So a lot of new faces coming in there. Have been very active in free agency. We talked about, you know, uh, Williams coming over from the Eagles and Stephon Diggs coming over as well. So they're going to bring a lot of different guys in. I think they're going to go offensive line there. Everybody's talking about Will Campbell out of LSU, the highest rated guy out there. Has a lot of Joe Thomas in him. We'll see if he lives up to that level. And that's what they need. But yeah, you're just not sure because Elliot Wolf's there. Is he on the same page with his head coach Mike Vrabel? How much power does Mike Vrabel wield, and would Vrabel go in a different direction? So I'll definitely be watching to see what they do. We talked about the Jaguars; they have a new regime.
Yep.
How's that going to factor into there? And I want to see your Giants. I want to see what they do if they stick to chalk or are they going to go in a new direction.
Well, I mean, listen, I know they were calling the Titans about that number 1 pick. They made a run at it, but nothing really materialized. I mean, they were aggressive enough to at least keep entertaining that conversation until what, mid-March? Because there was talk that Cam Ward thought the Giants were going to move up to get him. Now, obviously, as we look at it, Titans are grabbing him. And then Hunter, here's the thing, if you're the Browns, right? So you got the high floor, the high ceiling out of any player in the draft. If you crash and burn at wide receiver, we'll stick you as cornerback. If you crash and burn a quarterback in the NFL, we're going to stick you to wide receiver. I think the kid's going to be a hell of a player. I just think if you're Joe Shane and you're Brian Daboll, you don't overanalyze this. You brought in a veteran or veterans in Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. You know it is another rebuild. They're not the long-term answers. If you trade back with, add it back into the first round with your other draft picks and try to grab a Jackson Dart at 18, 19, great. Then you've got a quarterback that you believe can be under center for the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You just cannot, under any circumstances, if you are Joe Shane and Brian Daboll tonight, if you're the Giants and Mara, you cannot just because of the pressure or what you hear on sports talk radio or what the writers, go and get Sanders because of the buzz and you have to have a quarterback at number 3. You don't. You can get a quarterback in the second round. You can trade back.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
That's exactly what I text my buddy today. Don't friggin' overthink it. Don't analyze it. Don't overanalyze it. Just go number 3. Hand the friggin' card in to Roger the commish and let's go. Carter, Penn State. I want to hear that name. If I don't, I will be absolutely friggin' livid. And this is nothing personal against Sanders. I just don't grade him high like all these other people do. I think he's a very talented college quarterback. I think he'll have success in the NFL, but I want him no parts. I want him nowhere near the Giants. Nowhere near the Giants. I just don't. I don't. I don't know if the kid is 100% all in. And that's just my opinion. That's it. That's just my opinion, and I stand by it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Dable, Shane, they cannot afford to have another miss. With the whole Saquon Barkley situation, wiping the egg off their face with that. Past draft picks like a Will Hernandez that did not work out. They have to have a slam dunk here, and why not go for Carter if he falls in their lap, and then kind of move on from there? Because if they reach for a quarterback like Sanders, who needs to have system and people around him. Yes, they have Malik Neighbors, but what else is really there to help him out? He's going to be in trouble. And that line, we know that line has been a problem for years. So might not be the best situation for him. It'd be a tough thing for the kid to end up there. So I just don't think it's going to happen. I think they will be smart. I think they go for Carter.
All right, we'll see how it it's going to be absolutely crazy tonight. Yeah, I'm telling you, don't laugh. The Jets, the 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys. Watch, just watch. I'm telling you right now, we might be talking on a Friday edition of BYP that Sanders is the quarterback picked by one of those 3 franchises I just mentioned.
I've seen crazier things in the draft. I still remember the Lions taking Mike Williams when they had a boatload of receivers already and they took him in the first round. So
Yeah,
you just never know what. And I always say the bad teams find a way to make these crazy picks. And the smart teams with good leadership, they just stick to their
sure.
board and they just get it done.
And they're the teams that ultimately are consistently winning and going to the playoffs and winning championships. All right, he, of course, is Lloyd Vance. Don't forget, we're brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Back Here Play is also powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off the first purchase in the show notes, BYP20. We'll put this bad boy up on the YouTube channel, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Amazon Music. We will recap it all on a Friday edition of BYP. We gave you some good insight with the odds as well. So good luck. It's all about the bankroll management. And as we like to say, if you say it, you play it. If you back it, you're going to stack it. All right, my friend. Have fun with the draft tonight. I know you'll be texting me up to the draft pick.
Oh yeah, we'll be texting each other, and it's going to be that first surprise thing,
Yeah,
like we were just saying, like
yeah,
it's going very
yeah,
early by the Falcons. Somebody's going to jump up, because these GMs when they have their guy, they got to get him. They just got to jump
yeah,
on it.
yeah.
We're going
That's
to see
right.
how it turns out.
It's like a newborn with the blanket. You got to rip it out of their claws. They're not giving it up. So, all right. Enjoy it as always. We'll speak tomorrow. Always appreciate a couple moments, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, and share as well. Appreciate your life. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you later.